Hi, my name is Lavanya Mohan, and today I'd like to talk about variations during testing. Let's begin with a story. This is Deepa. She has two sons, a 5-year-old and an 18-month-old baby. Deepa is usually very busy with office and all the work at home. But one day, she has some help to take care of her children. So she decides to meet her friend Sandra for dinner. Deepa and Sandra go to a lovely Indian restaurant and have this delicious meal. After dinner, Sandra makes the complete payment. So Deepa says that she will transfer her share to Sandra the next day. The next morning, after completing her chores, Deepa decides to transfer her share to Sandra. She picks up her phone and logs into her favorite money transfer app. Then she tries to add Sandra as a payee. She selects the option to import contact details from the phone and searches for the name Sandra. She can see multiple search results because she has multiple contacts with the name Sandra on her phone. She selects the correct one and proceeds to the payment page. Just as she's about to enter the amount, she hears a loud noise, thud. She rushes to the kitchen and finds that her child has dropped his bowl of cereal. It's a complete mess. She prepares another bowl of cereal for the child and then cleans up this mess. A good 15 minutes have gone by. Then she tries to get back to transferring her share to Sandra. At this point, Deepa is logged out of the app due to inactivity. So she logs back in and selects the correct pay. Now Deepa can't remember the exact amount she owes. So she opens her messaging app and looks at her message history. Then she switches back to her money transfer app and enters the correct amount. Now, just as she's about to confirm the transaction, what happens? Well, the baby starts to cry. So she quickly confirms the transfer and then locks her screen by virtue of habit, tosses her phone on the couch, rushes to the baby, and does whatever she needs to pacify him. Now, does this sound like a scenario that might happen in the real world? I'm guessing many of you will probably say yes. Now imagine that we were testing this application and wanted to test this money transfer feature every time there were changes to this part of the app. We may be tempted to repeat a sequence of steps every single time. For example, we may select a pay, enter the amount, confirm a transfer, and check that the transfer was successful. Repeating a sequence of steps probably answers one type of question. Now, this is from a book called Explore It by Elizabeth Hendrickson. It says that our test strategy should seek to answer these core questions. Does the software behave as intended under the conditions it's supposed to be able to handle? Repeating a sequence of steps every time probably answers this question. A lot of people also call it checking, and a lot of it can be automated. But there's also another important question that we need to consider. Are there any other risks? Exploring the app, variations can help us find information about risks. Now, there are an infinite number of variations that are possible. We could have different strategies to select those variations which might lead to information that is valuable to the stakeholders. One of the approaches is user personas-based testing. User personas represent our end users who may use the apps in similar ways. Let's take an example. This is Jeff. He's a 68-year-old man who retired from his admin job at a university. He wears thick glasses and prefers large font size. He typically uses the web because he's not very comfortable using mobile phones. He reads pretty slowly, but he's also careful about things, so he reads all the terms and conditions and agreements carefully. Because he reads slowly, while reading terms and conditions, he might get logged out due to inactivity. He also panics pretty easily. So if he sees an error on the app, he might call customer support immediately. Now, if you're testing as Jeff, the way you would interact with the app would be different. Let's take another example. This is Samreen. She's a 19-year-old student of arts. She's pretty popular and has a lot of friends. She keeps getting constant notifications on her phone from different social media apps. She also switches between apps pretty often to reply to messages. She typically has battery saver turned on and uses power bank pretty often. She also uses the dark mode. Her phone memory is typically full from all those images and videos she uses to upload on Instagram or TikTok. Now, if you're testing as Samreen, the way you would interact with the app would be very different from the way you would interact with the app if you were testing as Jeff. Even your device settings would be pretty different. You could also have multiple kinds of user personas while testing. This is a tweet I saw recently by Chris M, which reminds us that we should also consider people with negative intents or even pathological conditions while doing user persona-based testing. Here's an example of Jack. Jack is a violent man looking for information about his ex who's hiding from him. User persona-based testing could help us do a lot of variations and uncover valuable information. Now, any talk about variations is probably incomplete without talking about habits or patterns. Oftentimes, especially when we're comfortable with the products that we're using, we might find ourselves repeating similar sequence of steps or similar actions. For example, do we enter similar search terms? Do we enter similar kinds of inputs? Do we select the same options from the dropdown? Do we select the first day of the month always? Do we typically use the mouse to navigate between pages? Do we always give all the permissions required for the app while testing? Do we test on similar kinds of devices? And so on. Let's take a step back and observe these habits and patterns. And then let's consciously vary our inputs and the way we interact with the app in order to uncover information that is valuable to our stakeholders. Thank you.